it was until it was too late. Once there was an old man who was obsessed with money. He lived in a mansion with his wife, but he would make his wife do everything for him because he didn't want to pay anyone else to help. But one day he grew sick, so he had to hire a housekeeper. But he could have never expected what happened next. One day a man arrived at the mansion to ask for food. No one was home except the housekeeper, so she gave him a bag of rice and told him to leave quickly before the old man found out. The man took the bag of rice, thanked the housekeeper, and gave her a face cloth in return. Before he left, he said that if she washed her face with it every day, she would become very beautiful. But there was a catch. If anybody else used it, there would be severe consequences. The housekeeper began washing her face with the cloth, and pretty soon she became the most beautiful person in town. The old man was jealous, and when he found out she got the cloth after she gave food to a stranger, he said it belonged to him because the rice she gave away was his to begin with. So he took the cloth and began using it for himself, ignoring the man's warning. His wife and the housekeeper looked in disbelief at what it did to him. As the old man looked up, they saw the face of a monster with red eyes staring back at them. Have you let anyone borrow your phone before? One woman let her son borrow her phone, but she could have never expected the terrifying thing she saw after she got her phone back. So this woman got her new phone, and she put it on the kitchen counter and went to watch some TV. That's when her son came in and asked if he could borrow the phone to play with it. The woman didn't think much of it at first, so she agreed. But she could have never known that this would lead to a terrifying discovery. When it was nighttime, she got ready to tuck her son into bed. So she went upstairs to his room, but he wasn't there. Then she ran over to her room and saw him sleeping on her bed with the new phone in his hand. She felt relieved, so she took her phone back and started looking through it. At first, nothing was out of the ordinary. She saw her background had changed, but it wasn't until she saw the photos that she found the horrifying surprise. There were many new photos on her phone that her son took around the house. The front door, the kitchen, and even photos of her taken from the back when she was watching TV. She started deleting these photos until the last one caught her eye. Instantly, she turned around, terrified. It was a photo of her son sleeping in her bed, but it was taken by someone else. Someone standing above him, and on the edge of the photo was half of a stranger's. I have a 9-year-old daughter who I named after my late grandmother, Annabelle, and I'm currently pregnant. If I'm having a girl, I want to name her after my other grandmother, Rose. My sister got pregnant about 5 months before me and says she wants to name her baby Rose. I said our kids can share the name, but she says I already have Annabelle and could have named her Annabelle Rose, but passed up on the chance. So now I can't have Rose. I told her I'll look for something else, but reserve the right to use Rose if I want to. Then I fell in love with the name Rosalie. It honors my late grandmother, my boyfriend loves it, and it won't piss off my sister. A couple of weeks later, my sister gives birth and announces her daughter's name is Rosalie. I am beyond upset because now she's trying to snatch both names from me. My mom calls me to say she knew my sister was planning to do this and hopes I'm not upset because this means I can take the original name I wanted, which is Rose. But I told my mom I'm sticking with Rosalie. She says it's impractical because both Rosalies will have the same surname. My sister is a single mom and my boyfriend will be taking my last name. My sister then calls me to say I'm an inconsiderate prick and that I'm being petty. She can name her kid whatever she wants and I can't monopolize the name. I said true, so by that same logic, I can use Rosalie. Mike by her choices, but she ended up
This is the reason why everybody thought I dropped out of high school. Over the 4 years of high school, I was probably in school a total of 100 times altogether. And this wasn't because I was lazy, I mean partially, but it was mostly because I had really bad stomach problems. So I always had these doctor's appointments, I was always missing school because my stomach hurt. So then my junior year, since my attendance was really, really bad, they decided to put me on home instruction. This means that teachers will come to my house for about 2 hours a day, 3 days a week. And my teachers had to bring with them these time slips. For example, saying that they saw me from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. And when I was a minor, my dad had to sign it. And when they hand in those time slips, those are the hours they're getting paid for. So I had this one teacher. She was my history teacher, but we would literally just gossip the entire time. She was mad chill. Sometimes, though, she would cancel on me, and sometimes I would cancel on her. But this was my senior year, so I was 18. So I was able to sign the time slips. So I saw her once a month when I was supposed to see her 4 times a month. So every time she came, I signed 4 time slips. I got the credit, she got the check.
My best friend's boyfriend starts DMing me on Instagram. He confesses that he had a crush on me when we were in college together. And I told him that I did too. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. From that day on, he would DM me every single day and we would just flirt back and forth. I started feeling really, really guilty and I told him one day, I can't do this anymore. That's when he told me he also felt guilty and that the best thing was for us to stop talking, so we did. I was so sad. A few weeks passed by and my best friend asked me if she could have the apartment all to herself because she's planning a romantic dinner for him. I said yes, but I felt so jealous. I left the apartment because I realized that I was so in love with him. I went to the supermarket and ate a whole pack of Oreo cookies and went to the movies. I get a text message from my best friend asking me to come home immediately. My stomach sank and I thought she had found out. When I get there, she's crying, and she says that he broke up with her. I asked if he said why, and she said because he was in love with another woman. My stomach sank again. I was there with her the entire night while she cried, knowing her boyfriend left her because of me. If you play an instrument, don't do what he did. Once there was a man known as the best guitar player in the world. He would play on the streets of his city and he made quite a good living from it because everyone knew who he was, until one day something terrifying happened. A rich man came up to him and said he wanted to hire the guitar player to perform at his private party. The guitar player agreed instantly. He arrived at the rich man's mansion, full of people waiting to see him play, and afterwards at night he walked home alone. That's when something he could never explain happened. He heard a sound coming from the bushes behind him, and suddenly a stranger appeared. This stranger asked, "That's a very beautiful guitar, can I play it?" The guitar player agreed and handed it to him, and this stranger played even better than he did. He was shocked and said, "That's amazing." The stranger replied, "Of course, I was a guitar player when I was alive." The guitar player ran and ran, not even looking back to get his guitar back. He thought this would be the end of it, but he was wrong. The next day, he opened up his door to find his guitar lying there, and the ghostly voice coming in from the hallway saying, "Here, I brought your guitar back." My fiancé and I are getting married in a few months, and our wedding is on a Saturday. It's 3 days after his niece's 6th birthday. He has 2 nieces while I have 1. When we booked the date, we were aware that it was close to her birthday, but we figured because it was not on her actual date, it would be fine. His sister has recently asked if we could make our wedding a little bit more special for her daughter. She asked if she could pick out the dresses, for her to wear a tiara while the other 2 have simple headbands, invite 1 school friend, and 30 minutes to an hour of her music playing. She also wanted people to sing happy birthday to her. We said no to this. We want the flower girl dresses to all look the same and to go with the color scheme. Plus, we know that if the other girls see her wear a tiara, then they will also want one. We don't want some kid at our wedding who is not with their own parents. As for the music, it would be annoying, but all guests are welcome to request songs to the DJ. And I told her we can sing happy birthday after we cut our cake and we can bring her out a little cupcake. My sister-in-law is unhappy about this, because our wedding means her daughter will not get a birthday party that year. And she thinks waiting until the weekend after is too long and it will upset her daughter. My partner is starting to cave, but I don't want to budge. He feels bad in the situation, but I don't. Am I wrong for not having a birthday party at my wedding?
Welcome back to Reddit Stories. About 18 years ago, my wife and I wanted to adopt a child, and we were paired up with an Asian couple. We assured them the child would be loved, which was the truth because we instantly fell in love with our baby boy. After about 8 months, though, we started to feel twinges of guilt because our perfect Chinese son was going to be raised in this whitewashed household by 2 ding-dongs who were unable to provide him with any sort of connection to his cultural heritage or identity. There happened to be a large Chinese population in our city, though, so it seemed like a no-brainer for us to expose him as much as we could. We enrolled him in Mandarin classes, and we even developed a relationship of sort with a Chinese couple who became his adopted auntie and uncle. We even took family trips to China every couple of years. Flash forward to recently, he's now 17 years old and getting ready to go to college, so my wife and I are helping him fill out the financial aid form. Digging through my office for the needed paperwork, I came across his adoption papers, and it was only then that I saw it. Something so obvious, so painfully prick to the face obvious. Something that neither my wife nor I, in the stupidity of our youth, had registered. The names on the adoption paperwork were Park and Kim. Our son was Korean.
Time to react to another one. I'm gonna react to this one. Ooh, wow.
Here's the story of something a client said to me while I was doing her makeup that I will never forget. A couple of videos ago, somebody commented asking for this story, but honestly, I can't find the comment anymore, so if you guys find it, make sure you tag them below. This story takes place back when I used to work on boudoir shoots. And as I've mentioned before, for most of the women that would come in, this was a completely new experience. Some of which had never even worn makeup before. And it was my job as the makeup artist to make sure that they felt comfortable in what they were wearing and that they looked great on camera. At this particular shoot, I had about 5 or 6 clients coming in that day. The client that I'm focusing on this story came in somewhere in the middle. Meaning she wasn't my first client, but she also wasn't my last for the day. When you're working on set of a photo shoot, things can get kind of hectic, especially towards the middle of the shoot, because you're constantly trying to clean your brushes and reset up your station for the next person to come in, which is usually literally 10 minutes after the last one left. When my client came in, I asked her if she had a photo of what kind of makeup she wanted, or if she knew the vibe of the photo shoot she was going to be doing today. I was really just trying to feel her out and make sure that we had a good starting point set. My client was very shy, and she pretty much told me that she doesn't wear very much makeup ever and that she just wanted to make sure she felt beautiful. I pulled up some reference photos on Pinterest and asked her to look through a couple. After about 5 minutes of scrolling on Pinterest, my client looked up at me and told me she didn't want anything crazy, nothing too dark, and that actually she really liked the makeup I was wearing if I could just do the same thing I did to myself that morning. I don't remember exactly the look I was wearing that day, but I do remember it was something very simple and something that just made me feel pretty. I was extremely flattered, and so that's the look we did. I made sure to keep her foundation light, give her some nice warm tones in her contour,
and really work with the eye shape while giving her something natural and beautiful. Other than that, my client didn't really say much. I could tell that she was a very shy, nervous woman. Right before she got up out of my chair to go into the photo shoot, I handed her a mirror. And like I said, she was extremely shy. She didn't really say much. But she did tell me that she loved it, and then she got up to go get dressed for her photo shoot. After that, my next client came in, and then the next, and then the next. And kind of in the back of my mind all day, I just kept wondering if that lady really did like her makeup, because she really didn't say much to me at all. And it would make me feel absolutely terrible if she didn't feel beautiful in those pictures. When I got home after the photo shoot, I unpacked my makeup kit, started washing all of my brushes, and I got a text message on my phone. It was from the client that I had been thinking about literally all day. She said she just really wanted me to know that she really appreciated the makeup I did for her earlier, and that was the most beautiful she had ever felt in her entire life. As a makeup artist, getting that text message was absolutely incredible, and that became one of my favorite parts of doing makeup, is that whenever they get out of my chair and look in the mirror, they feel absolutely beautiful. The look I did in this video is something that makes me feel beautiful, and I would love to see what makes you feel that way.
In college, you get a lot of free stuff, and by that, I mean you get bags of rubbers. Any kind you can imagine. Flavored, glow in the dark, any colors you want, like, they have them all, and they keep them in little bags. And I became a very frequent customer, because you don't have to pay for them, they just give them to you. And honestly, people really like when you're like, you want to try bubblegum flavor? So about my third time stopping by the booth, they say, oh my gosh, we noticed you come here a lot, which means you should also get tested for STDs. And I was like, okay, because you guys provide such customer service, I suppose I'll get tested. And the testing was free, so I do it, and they're like, look, if we find anything we don't like, we'll give you a go, but you probably shouldn't have to worry. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And I actually was kind of worried, because I just begun seeing this guy, and his name was Garrett, and he did theater like me. He was funny, he was talented, he was nice, and I just been seeing him a lot, so I was like, I think this can work. Fast forward like a week, I'm hanging out, and I get a call, and I'm like, what's up? And they're like, you have chlamydia. And, I'm not gonna lie, I had a breakdown. I was freaking the fuck out, just because I was like, I don't even know where I got it from. And I would say where I got it from, but then this story would just be sad. And on the phone, they're like, you're gonna have to come in, you're gonna have to take these pills, and we're gonna have to ask you some questions. I'm freaking the fuck out. I go in, and I'm like, what are the questions? And they're like, name every single sexual partner you've ever had, write them down, and now you need to contact them all to tell them to get tested. Hi, my name's Adrian. I gave you chlamydia. That's what they wanted me to do. That's what they wanted me to do, and I was gonna do it, because if you don't do it, it's fucking illegal. By the way, it's illegal. So, who do I have to tell? Garrett. I have to tell Garrett. Hey, Garrett. I know everything's going great, but I gave you chlamydia. I called Garrett, and I'm like, hey, Garrett, I need to give you something. No, tell you something. He's like, you can tell me whatever. Come over. I come over, and I hang out with Garrett. I grab both of his hands, and I'm like, look, I know we only had protected, but you need to get tested, because I am a carrier of chlamydia. And I start crying, because I really liked Garrett. And oddly, Garrett's really sympathetic. Garrett grabs my hands, and he says, hey, don't feel bad, all right? I have something to tell you that might make you feel better. Really, Garrett? What is it? I know exactly how you're feeling right now. It's so hard. Oh, what do you mean, Garrett? Well, last year I infected the entire theater department at Mizzou with chlamydia through a chain reaction, so I've been there. Not the same, Garrett. When I was in school, I was bullied a lot, and honestly, I don't even really judge these kids. I was weak, and they saw that, and as nature implies, they took advantage of it. Specifically the neighborhood kids. I won't name any names, but I was kind of like just like the kid that was like around to like just be pushed around or picked on. Like literally one time we were even walking home, and two of the girls were like walking behind me, and like they were laughing really hard, and I was like, what's so funny, guys? And they were like, we were just like joking about putting you in front of one of those cars. And like, obviously I didn't laugh nearly as hard, because all I could think about was dying.
But this actually manifested into a series, a rivalry, if you will. I wasn't really down for this rivalry, though, because, again, like, I was weird. I liked God, I liked reading, and I liked boys, but only boys that were in emo fashion. I was a simple girl, and I did not cuss. And one day at school, the neighborhood girls came up to me, and the leader of them, let's call her Alice. Alice walks up to me and she's like, so you think you're better than us? And I'm like, what? Because I played cello, you know? I wasn't walking around with my cello case, coming out of orchestra acting like I owned anything, let alone an ounce of social standing. So I was just confused. And I was like, I don't think I'm better than you, Alice. And Alice was like, yeah, you do. You don't talk to us at school. You think you're better than us. You walk around. You think you're so cool. And I was like, I really don't think I'm anything. And then she says, let's fight. Let's fight right now. And there's these kids that are starting to circle around us. And I'm like, I know I'm going to get my ass beat, so I would prefer if we didn't fight. Except it came out sounding like, no, thank you. My mom says that girls aren't allowed to fight, so I would like to not fight. And she's like, no, let's fight right now. And I was just like, look, I don't want to fight you. And you even talking to me makes me look bad. I don't know where the fuck that came from. I'm pretty sure I heard it in a movie. Like, I heard it in a movie, and I was so ready to use it. And I thought it was so fucking cool. And she goes, oh yeah? Your dad divorced your mother because he doesn't love you, and that's why he doesn't want to be around. I kind of just... everything went silent because, like, nobody had known that my parents were divorced. So I just walked away and I cried. Just in a corner 5 feet away, and everybody agreed it was a little harsh. And then fast forward to the 8th grade dance, she said something shysty to me. I don't really remember, but I think it was something along the lines that I looked fat. And so I decided to cuss for the very first time, and I said, what the shit, Alice? What the shit is wrong with you? What the Okay, I have a story, and if you'll excuse me for I'm smiling so much, I'm just like a little tipsy. But I was in 5th grade, and I wanted to be in the talent show, but I was way too scared to do it by myself. I originally had one of my friends like plan it with me, and we were going to do a duet and a planned dance to Fergalicious by Fergie. Which, like, now I don't even think about it, like, that's not really that appropriate for 5th graders. But it's what I chose because I loved Fergie and my mom didn't watch me. I had done the costume designing. I got my mom's floor-length fur coat, a pair of heels that didn't fit me. And I'm not gonna lie, I was like the brains, I was a choreographer, I was the person who had definitely put the most work into the performance. And unfortunately, I have my partner step out on me. And the way that the talent show worked is you had to try out for the talent show and then you made the talent show. The trying out, though, was actually just, like, in front of your class. So, like, the 5th grade class would see you try out for the talent show. And if you made it, you could be in the school-wide talent show because you were talented enough. So, my partner backs out. And I'm just like, holy shit, who am I going to get to be my partner? Hold on. Oh my god, I literally have a yearbook. Shut up, I'm looking for it, hold on. I found it. Oh my god, I almost broke my phone. That's me, that's what I look like. So imagine just this girl doing this before you see this story. And I called upon this girl. This was the neighborhood girl in my neighborhood. And I was like, look girl, you're gonna have to perform Fergalicious with me. You have what it takes. And she was like, yeah, I'll perform it. We get on stage. This bitch doesn't know Fergalicious. I'm there with my entire fur coat, my big ass sunglasses, and I was new in town. I had just gone to the school like I just transferred, and this is my big debut. And I'm like, 5th grade, and I'm like, Fergalicious, I am promiscuous and this body tastes delicious. Because again, I cannot stress enough, I did not have an active parent. And you know
finished Burgalicious by myself. And I didn't make any friends after that.
I know I told y'all the story about Seth, but there's another Seth who caused me way more pain than my great emo king, Seth Waffles. That's what he went by the way. He went by Seth Waffles. But this Seth was local. He was a homegrown, asshole. Ever since I was little, I hated Seth. I was childhood friends with this guy named Justin, and he was best friends with Seth. And if Justin was hanging out with Seth, and I was in elementary, I ran my happy ass upstairs. He creeped me the fuck out. And he wasn't like weird, like, he was popular. He was way more popular than me, but the way he looked at me, I don't know. There was something so dark and fucking twisted behind those little blue eyes. And he had no eyebrows. He had like pale ass eyebrows. So fast forward, we're in junior high. I look like this. Don't laugh. This is how I look like. This is a real fucking picture of me and not Coconut Head from Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide. There was something about this face that just... it made people filled with rage. Like, I was targeted. Like, I was random, I was cool, and I didn't deserve what happened to me. So that sweet girl, she's excited because she gets to go to Slitterbond. It's a junior high trip, and even though it's my worst fear, wearing a swimsuit, I'm like, this is gonna be the best day of my life. I pick out my swimsuit, I get my things together, and I'd actually just been bitten by a brown recluse. I had an open wound in the back of my leg, but even though the doctor said I couldn't go, I wanted to go, so I was in pain, but I wish. And I'm getting on the bus, and Seb and Sebastian, his stupid little friend, come up to me, and they're like, and I'm just clutching my open wound, and I'm like, how may I help you? And Seth is like, oh, Sebastian wants to ask you something. And Sebastian looks at me and he goes, do you want to go out with me? Clearly it was a joke. You guys saw what I looked like. And I knew it. I knew it was a fucking joke. So I was like, scared at them. I was being abused at home. I knew when somebody was fucking with you, and I was just like, I'm getting on the bus and I'm gonna enjoy my day anyway. After riding in the bus alone, I'm on my way to get the free lunch under the pavilion, and a group of super popular kids stops me. The most popular girl comes forward. I'm just trying to get to the pavilion again, free food. And she's like, really fucking cruel, bro. So I heard Sebastian asked you out earlier, but now he's actually going out with Alexia, so I think that means he asked you out as a joke. I freeze because I'm in my mom's one piece, and I'm chubby, and I'm chafing. And I was like, yeah, I get it, I'm being made fun of, I get it. And you think it would end there, right? No, because now that's a joke. Weeks later, Seth comes up to me, and he has all these papers, and he said, I got everybody in school to sign them. And I say, what? And he says, it's a petition for you to be nicer to me. And I was like, are you not tired of this, Seth?
A story time about how I actually changed the girl in school. So one time there was a girl who I hated. I didn't even go to I did go, but I got there late. Found her bullying my little sister and brother. I tried to everybody was later the teacher came and we were having a fight. I told her everything. I always found out. They did not. They didn't show me. They expelled me for 3 years. 3 years later, it was a school dance, and she came there and shaved me right in front of my friend. So I shaved friend, and everybody else ashamed me. That made because that did happen. It was so disgusting. They had to expel the teacher because of it. It was horrible. Now time to react to a gut check.
Large chunks of his lung, the doctor needed to do a biopsy to see if it really was cancer. So a terrified Mr. Sidorkin came in a few days later. They performed the biopsy. This girl literally lived a nightmare. A 17-year-old girl was watching TV late at night when her motion detector lights in her driveway suddenly went on. She assumed it was just an animal, so she got up, drew the blinds, and went back to watching TV. Then a little bit later, it happened again. Before she could even react, she looks over and clearly makes out a silhouette of a person right behind the blinds who starts banging aggressively on the window. The girl stands up and goes, "I'm gonna call the cops!" And the figure stops for just a second, sprints to the side door and starts pounding even louder on that, screaming incoherently. The girl runs to the bathroom, barricades herself inside while she waits for the police, and then her worst nightmares come true. She hears glass shatter in the other room. After a few minutes of silence, she opens her door just a crack to get a peek outside, and standing in her living room next to a broken window is some crazy old woman who looks over at her and starts sprinting toward her. The lady comes smashing into the door and starts wailing on it until the police arrive and take her away. She was a lunatic who had escaped her facility. If you scare easily, swipe on. In 1989, a woman started hearing strange banging sounds in her walls and in the ceiling. And then one night, the crawl space to her attic was open, so she went to go have a look. When she's just feet away, an old man suddenly appears in the crawl space and looks her dead in the eye before vanishing. There was nobody else in the house. Worried no one's going to take her seriously over an apparent ghost in her house, she ends up calling a paranormal investigator. When the paranormal crew arrived, they were actually very skeptical until they heard loud banging in the attic and they decided to go up and have a look. As soon as the two men get up into the attic, one of them screams and suddenly disappears. The other, who didn't have a flashlight, starts using the flash on his camera to illuminate the attic, and he takes one of the most famous pictures in paranormal history. His partner, who was in total shock, had been lifted off the ground and tied to one of the beams. That was the last night the woman ever stayed in the house. However, it's still being rented out today, but nobody stays longer than 1 or 2 months. This sounds totally made up until you listen to the police report. In the early 90s, a teenage girl started to see these shadowy figures that would come into a room at night and crawl all around her room and even grab at her legs. At the same time, her health began to rapidly deteriorate, which ultimately led to her death, which doctors never understood. A few days after her death, her sister woke up to a whistling sound and saw a creature crawling around her room with no face. The same night, her mom was ripped out of bed by someone. The father calls the police, who come over, they search the house, they don't find anything, it's all quiet. As they're about to leave, they hear something. Horrifying screams coming out of the bedroom. They run inside, no one's in there, but there are these huge gashes on the wall that were not there before. The police get out of there. In the police report that was filed immediately after this house call, the chief inspector and the 3 officers that were there that night swear they saw and heard the same things as the family, which means the police officially believed that the house was haunted. It's what she finds in the kitchen that's really scary. In the early 90s, a young girl was sleeping. Get out of there. In the means the police officially believed that the house was haunted. It's what she finds in the kitchen that's really scary. In the early 90s, a young girl was sleeping in her mom's bed when she suddenly woke up for no reason. She looked at her door and she saw her very affectionate cat kind of meowing down the hall as if someone was coming up to pet it, but she was next to her mom and they were the only ones in the house. The girl shakes her mom awake and points to the cat just as a man is walking past the door and disappears into the room across the hall. Before the man could come back out and find them, they both jump out the window, run across the street, and call the police. When the police arrive, the guy is nowhere to be found, but they do discover that the front door was unlocked, so that had to be the way he got in and out. But the mother swears up and down that she locked that door before she went to bed. A week later, the mother's cleaning their kitchen, and she opens up the water heater closet where she finds this notebook that inside is their names and pictures of them in it, along with a pair of surgical gloves. Which means someone had snuck in at some point, was living in that closet spying on them, and then walking around their house at night. This is why you should always be afraid of strangers. In 2014, a disturbing text message conversation between 2 spying on them and then walking around their house at night. This is why you should always be afraid of strangers. In 2014, a disturbing text message conversation between 2 classmates was uploaded to the internet. Annie and David are talking casually, and then Annie hears footsteps outside and goes to look. She sees someone standing in her yard, and she assumes it's just Dave playing a joke on her, but it's not. Suddenly, the stranger starts sprinting towards her house. He smashes through a window, and now he's in her house. She freaks out, jumps in a closet, and tells Dave to call the police. She tells Dave that he's yelling for her to come out, and then Annie stops texting. When Annie finally writes back that everything's just fine, Dave realizes something. He wasn't talking to Annie anymore. The more you think about how this true story ends, the creepier it gets. In 2015, a college student was renting the basement apartment of his friend's house. One weekend, his basement roommates take off for the night, so he decides to use that time to get some homework done distraction-free. But as soon as he sits down to do his work, his friend upstairs and his family starts making all this noise, moving furniture around, shuffling feet. It's impossible to focus, so he picks up his phone and he texts his friend. "You guys sound like you're really having a good time up there. I'm not really getting anything done. Can I come up?" And his buddy says, "No one is home. We went to Wisconsin for the weekend." Terrified, he runs out the side. People believe that these 3 things will actually save your life. They don't. Let's pretend you're at the ATM and this guy comes up behind you with a knife. He demands that you pull out as much money as you can and give it to him. But you remember that if you just punch in your ATM code backwards, it will still give you cash and it will tell the authorities that you're being robbed. Except that's a myth, and all you end up doing is locking your account, making your attacker that much more suspicious of you. And so what does he do? He gets ready to actually attack you. But what do? You remember that you're a karate master, and so of course you're gonna fight back. And so while you're getting in your stance, he just instantly stabs you. Because disarming someone with a knife is so hard to do, even if you're experienced at it. It's like trying to disarm a child who's got an uncapped marker without getting marker on you. It ain't gonna happen. So now you're stabbed, but you remember, I can just yank this bad boy out and apply pressure and be fine. But that's not true. You bleed to death. When you finish this video, you're going to Google 2 words. In 2014, 2 Dutch college students were staying in Panama when they decided to take their host family's dog out for a walk. The dog returned, but the girls didn't. After 10 weeks without any leads, a local woman turned in a blue backpack that contained the girls' cell phones and their camera. Using their call log, they were able to determine that the girls would attempt to reach emergency services 77 times, all unsuccessful, starting just hours into their trip. It was also determined that 5 days after those 77 calls, somebody tried unsuccessfully several times to unlock the girls' phones. But the most distressing thing is what was found on the camera. The first set was taken on the day they left and they were totally normal. The second set was taken in the middle of the night over a week after they had left, and it showed all their belongings neatly laid out on a rock, and it showed one of the girls who appeared to be hurt. They found their remains spread out around the area where the backpack was found, and some of their bones appeared to have been bleached. There is still no official cause of death or explanation as to what happened. This is a highly controversial topic. In 2016, a man posted on Facebook that the local police were going to kill him that weekend. That weekend, he died under very suspicious circumstances that we will get to. Immediately following his death, his YouTube page, which contained footage from his home's camera system, went viral. One of his videos shows a large group of police officers standing in front of his house for no apparent reason in the middle of the night. Others show what he claims to be plainclothes police officers casing his property. But the most talked about video is the one where the van shows up in front of his house, revealing a guy with a fairly high-tech camera who just starts filming his house. The man was found dead in his home after it had burned down, and he was found to have stab wounds on his back and his stomach. His death was determined to be self-inflicted. However, the debate rages on online. What happened to John Lang? No one would believe this story if there wasn't a video. In 2013, a rogue wave capsized the tugboat, killing 11 of 12 men on board. The 12th man was flung into the hallway, which was already filled with water. Panicked, he starts swimming towards the exit, but accidentally goes into the engine room where he finds an air pocket. And there this poor man sat, listening to the sounds of these huge sharks fighting over the bodies of his friends just on the other side of the wall. Total darkness, no food or water 100 feet below the surface. 3 days later, one of the divers that was sent down there to retrieve their bodies sees a hand.
On one, yeah? He survived. Okay. Alright.
Harrison O'Keefe survived the ordeal and plans on writing a book. This is why you should always breathe through your nose. In 2009, a Russian man named Artyom Sidorkin started experiencing intense chest pains to the point where he couldn't even stand up. He tried to ignore it, but when he started coughing up blood, he went to the emergency room. They gave him an x-ray, and it revealed a fist-sized tumor growing in his lung. Afterwards, the doctor told Mr. Sidorkin, unfortunately, it looks like cancer. But before they could start removing large chunks of his lung, the doctor needed to do a biopsy to see if it really was cancer. So a terrified Mr. Sidorkin came in a few days later. They performed the biopsy, and the surgeon, as he was looking at the tissue, noticed something. Tucked in the middle of the tissue was a 5-centimeter long fir tree. Mr. Sidorkin was a botanist, and he was a big mouth breather, and at some point while he was working, he managed to inhale a fir tree seed. The doctors told him he didn't have cancer, he had a tree. He was shocked, and he said, I had no sense that a tree was growing in my lungs. But more than shocked, he was just happy to be cancer-free. If you make it to the end, I'm sorry. In 2007, a woman was lying awake in her hotel bed when she started hearing a kid run up and down the hall laughing and making tons of noise. She considered going out and telling the kid to be quiet, but eventually just said whatever and fell asleep. The next morning she got up and asked her teenage daughter who was staying in the room next door if she had heard the kid, and she said yes, it was so annoying. That night the woman is back in bed trying to sleep when once again she hears the kid in the hall. Now feeling pretty annoyed herself, she starts walking to the front door to get a better listen when the footsteps stop right in front of her door and she hears the kid playing with the do not disturb sign. She leans into the peephole to get a better look, but the kid's gone. So she steps into the hallway and looks. This is why you should be careful what you put in the mail. In 2015, a man was asked by his neighbor to collect his mail while he was gone for a few weeks. A few days later, a large package arrives on his neighbor's front porch. The man can barely lift it, but gets over to his garage where he accidentally drops it and hears something break inside. Hoping his neighbor would think the damage occurred en route, he closes his squeaky garage door and forgets about it. But over the next couple of days, whatever was in that package started to smell so bad that he decides to open it up. Inside were two very important finds, his neighbor, who was dead, and a camera that was still recording. The police bring the man in for questioning and show him what was on the camera inside the box. It starts with his neighbor talking to the camera about how excited he is to mail himself home for his YouTube channel. Then, police fast forward to the very end where they see that the neighbor is now sleeping in the box, and then suddenly gets dropped and you hear a crack. That's his neck breaking. And then you hear a squeaky garage door close.
Did you know that gummy bears actually have a really dark history? So gummy bears were invented in the early 1900s, and they were originally called dancing bears. Now, in Europe following World War I, dancing bears were quite the attraction, and people didn't see anything wrong with this, which I find crazy. The bears would often be chained, made to wear silly clothing, and usually their teeth would have been completely removed so that they were considered safe for the public. These bears were a very popular attraction at fairs and carnivals in most European cities, and this is literally what gummy bears were based off of. I had no idea they had such a dark history, and obviously later on they changed it from dancing bears to gummy bears, which is a lot better, and they're definitely not associated with that anymore, but it's definitely sad to know the history.
Honestly, no one would believe this story except it's actually true. In 1961, a B-52 bomber carrying 2 live nuclear bombs was conducting a very covert airborne alert mission when the pilot got on the radio and told the entire crew to abandon the plane because it was going down. The plane ultimately caught fire and exploded, dropping 2 live thermonuclear warheads between the towns of Goldsboro and Faro, North Carolina. These bombs are used to crush cities. They're 25 times stronger than the ones we used in Hiroshima. Each bomb has 4 safety mechanisms before it detonates. On the bomb recovered, 3 of those safety mechanisms were activated, meaning only a single switch kept the bomb from detonating. And the second bomb is still in the swamps of North Carolina.
Unless you've heard this story, there's no way you could have guessed what was on that ship. In 2012, an old Russian cruise liner was being towed to the Caribbean to be used for scrap when the tow line snapped. They tried to recover it, but it drifted into international waters and everybody just kind of assumed it would sink, so they said, forget about it. It didn't sink, because a year later they got a GPS signal from the unmanned ship showing that it had drifted nearly 2/3 of the way across the Atlantic and was now poised to strike the British coastline. At first, British authorities were not concerned with the damage this ship might cause to their coastline until scientists revealed what was on the ship.
It was being towed to the Caribbean last year when it came loose during a storm. It's now feared to be infested with cannibal rats on board, who, lacking a food source, have turned on each other.
Cannibal rats? That's pretty shocking.
Did you know that back in the day they used to use spider webs as band-aids? I had no idea this was actually a thing, and it definitely blew
Other.
Cannibal rats? That's pretty shocking.
Did you know that back in the day they used to use spider webs as band-aids? I had no idea this was actually a thing, and it definitely blew my mind when I found out. In ancient Greece and Rome, doctors used spider webs as bandages for their patients. Spider webs have natural antiseptic and antifungal properties, which actually helps with cleaning and preventing an infection. It was also said that spider webs are rich in vitamin K, which helps clot blood and close wounds. Could you imagine having like a cut on your leg and the doctor's like, here, put a spider web on it?
This is what they meant when they said, don't talk to strangers. In the early 1900s, a